Hey guys, it's Sarah and today is BookList Thursday, and this is a video series I do with my friend over at Lindsay's Little Library, and we talk about different book topics every week and just things we want to talk about, give you a little bit of a list of things. And this week we are getting back into the school spirit because school is starting. My girls have already been in school. They started August 13th, so they are into it. They are loving it. They're having a great time, and I believe Lindsay's kids start very soon. I think they start towards the end of the month or maybe right after Labor Day, something like that. So we're both getting back into the school routines and doing all that. So this week we thought it would be kind of fun to talk about books that we personally feel should be required reading in schools for kids to read. And this was probably the hardest one yet. What I personally found hard was some books that I was thinking about choosing. A lot of times they're already required reading. So one of these might be a little bit of a cop-out. And then there's some that I have that I think I would feel that way, but I haven't read them yet. And I don't want to suggest books that I haven't read. So this one was a little tricky for me, but I did come up with 5. The first one would actually be definitely like seniors in high school because some of these stories in here are violent, but they're very interesting. And that is the classic fairy tales. This one is edited by Maria Tartar, and this has some of the classic fairy tales in their original form, and then it goes into commentary about them, about pros and cons and how it changes and why it gets changed over the years and all that. I read this in college and I thought it was very interesting, enough that I still have it on my shelves, and it just goes over some of the big Disney fairy tales that we know about today and kind of what their original form was and what the criticisms were of the original forms and how it's changed over time. So I think this would be very interesting for high schoolers to read and to get them to, look at things in a different way and see how these fairy tales that they grew up listening to were originally written. So very interesting, but definitely for more mature high schoolers, like, junior, senior year probably. But yeah, so I'm going to say this one. All right, this one is my cop-out answer because this is required reading in a lot of places, but it's not everywhere, and I feel like it should be everywhere, especially in the United States, because it does reflect a certain time in our history that's very important to recognize and to grow from and to, learn from it. And yeah, so To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This book is so beautiful, and this book is, it follows a young girl named Scout, and she is the daughter of a white lawyer who is living in Alabama in the 1940s, I believe, where, there's a lot of prejudice going on and a lot of racism going on. And that's why this book gets challenged, because of, prejudice and racial themes going throughout it. The thing, though, is that this book shows and sends the message that racism is wrong, and you should not judge people by the color of their skin, or you should not make assumptions that people are committing crimes because of the color of their skin, and that's what happens in here. And it is a white lawyer crusading for a black man who's been unjustly imprisoned for a crime. So it gets challenged because of that, but I think that's the beauty of this book, and I think that that is the epitome of, showing what has happened in history and learning and growing from it, not just trying to ignore it. And I just think it's so important. I really, really do. And this story is just so beautiful. And you see this young girl watch her father and learn from him, and she grows up to be a better person and to respect people better because of it. And I think that's so important. And yeah, I love it. It's why it won a Pulitzer Prize. It's why Harper Lee has gotten so many literature awards because of this book. This was her only published book before she passed away. And then they did Go Set a Watchman, which I've heard is not good. So I'm not reading it. This is it. This is my beauty. I'm going to let this be it. I don't want anything to taint this at all. So I will not be reading that one. But I really feel like everybody should read this. And I think it is such an important thing that our children, they learn about this period of time in our history, and we need to learn something good from it. And this is good. So everyone should read this. Okay, now we're going to move into World War II because that's all I could really come up with on my shelves about what I feel like should be required reading, because World War II is such a big period of our history that is studied in school in their history classes, because it was such a big thing that happened in, our world. So I have 1 nonfiction and 2 historical fiction books that center around World War II and different areas of World War II. So I think that any of these would be great for required reading. So let's do the nonfiction first. That's Night by Elie Wiesel. And this is the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, actually. And this is Elie's actual account of being in a concentration camp as a Jewish boy in World War II. So this one is incredibly heartbreaking because it's his personal account of what happened, and you can't get any closer to that. Even the best fiction writer is not going to get the kind of details that you're going to get from this book. And it's so short, but it packs such a big punch. I cried throughout this book. I remember reading this, I think right after college, and I bawled my eyes out because of what this man went through as a boy. And he has since passed away, but he has written a couple of books actually about his time. So he has Night, which was his first one, and I think there's a Dawn and a Day as well that cover like different things about his experiences. I haven't read the other 2 yet, but this one is just wow. And I think a lot of people, it would impact so many young kids and, help them to not only learn about the history of the concentration camps and what the Germans put these people through, and it would also just help to teach people that you don't do that. You don't treat people this way ever, ever, ever. So good. The next one is a historical fiction, and that is The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. Now this one's interesting for me. I started reading this not too long after it came out, I believe, and I couldn't get into it. I got like a quarter of the way through it, and I don't know why I couldn't connect with it for some reason, but a quarter of the way through it, I was like, I have no idea what's happening, and I stopped reading it. And I was like, it's not the book for me. And I don't know why. It wasn't the right time, I think. And everyone kept telling me, I need to read it, it's so good, give it another chance. And I was just like, yeah. And then I ended up picking it up. I listened to it on audiobook and ended up really enjoying it. I gave it 4 stars. Now, I listened to it, which the audiobook is good. The narrator is really, really good. But I really feel like if I physically read this and like do a reread, I would get a lot more out of it. And I could maybe give it a 5 stars. I don't know. I don't know if it's because this was one of the first historical fictions I read. Maybe like I just wasn't used to the genre. I don't know what it is, but I couldn't give it a 5 stars, and people are always so shocked that I didn't give it a 5 stars. So I don't know what it is, but I feel like I should give it a 5 stars, and I feel maybe if I read it physically, I would probably get more out of it than I did with the audiobook. That's my hope anyway. So I actually do plan to reread this at some point. I don't know when that's gonna happen. And I actually have like a really beat up copy. There's like tape on the spine. I got it at a library sale, and it was like 10 cents or something. It's still like, really put together. It's just there's, tape on the spine. But yeah, so I want to give it another shot, but I do feel like it would be good required reading, especially for high schoolers, and, just about the life of a young girl living in Germany, and just she's trying to basically survive, and her family ends up taking in Jewish refugees in their basement, so they have to be very careful about that, and it gets very dangerous. And it's called The Book Thief because she loves books, but Germans have banned the reading materials of everybody, and so she actually ends up stealing some books and hoarding them and keeping them secret because she loves books so much. But then you also see her as her family takes in refugees, and how she helps with that, and how she bonds with some of these people. So yeah, I definitely want to reread it, but I think that having high schoolers read this would also be a good thing. And the last one that I have here, I think would be good for probably upper middle school and into high school as well. And that is The Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. And this one follows a real disaster that happened in the oceans. There is a German ship that is carrying refugees onto it. and they are, you know, transporting people and getting them to safety basically. And it's, you know, only Jewish people, or not Jewish people. Wow, no. Only German people are allowed on this boat. And you see people pretending to be German so that they can get on the boat and get to safety, even though they're Polish or, you know, anything but German. And you kind of see how that's going. And this follows 5 different characters, I believe. And one of them is actually a German soldier. So it's very interesting in that you kind of jump around between characters and see how, you know, what their background is and why they're in the situation that they're in. They end up all traveling together somehow. They're all connected. And it was very interesting. I love the way it was written. And I love that it's based on a real thing that was really pushed down and never really spoken about. And it's one of the worst maritime disasters in history as far as casualties go. This killed more people than the Titanic. We hear about the Titanic all the time, but we never hear about this disaster. And that's because the Germans wanted to push it down because the Russians bombed this boat and killed all these people, and the Germans didn't want that on their record. Lovely, right? So I think it's fascinating. I think it's very interesting. You learn something new in here. And yeah, so I think like young adults would get a lot out of this one, as far as, you know, something that happened in our history that no one really talks about, and it's presented in a different way. Okay guys, that is it. Those are some books that I feel would be great to have required reading in schools. I would love to know what your answers for this are and see what you guys can come up with. So leave me a comment down below and let me know any type of book that you feel should be required reading for kids to read in school, or anything that maybe used to be required reading that is not required reading anymore, and then maybe they should bring it back, something like that. And make sure you head over to Lindsay's channel and check out her video. I'm excited to see what she says as well. I will have her channel linked down below. Hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you again soon. Bye.